Ruin my childhood.
This is Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Kat.
I'm Mike.
And today we are talking about Zorro, the Gay Blade.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. In some countries it's called Zorro Swings Again because homophobia.
Yeah, I suppose it's difficult to pull that off if being gay is illegal in your country.
Well, even in Australia, but that's just because Australia is very bigoted.
Yeah. We're starting this one off nice and light. When was the first time you saw Zorro, the Gay Blade?
I saw it probably when I was like 10 or 11. My mom really liked the movie, and I don't really remember it that much. I vaguely remember it's, Zorro gets hurt and his like cousin or some other family member takes over, but his cousin or other family member is gay, and Zorro becomes very flamboyant. And that's really all that I remember about the movie. I know I've watched it with you at least once, but I think that was when we first started dating. So it's been like 10 years since I've watched it. And
wow.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since I've seen it. My parents really liked this movie. It was kind of a legend in our family.
In the Sherwood clan?
Yeah, kind of like Romancing the Stone.
Oh, that's a great movie. We should do that someday.
Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
Oh.
Dr. Strangelove.
That's a good one.
I actually, because I knew that my parents loved this so much, I sought out the movie and I rented it from the library and I really liked it. And then there was one night when I was going to a sleepover at a friend's house. I must have been like 16 because I think I was already driving on my own. And I went to the library.
Brag.
I went to the library because that's what I would do because I had no money. And I just grabbed a whole bunch of VHS off the shelf and rented those, and that's what we watched, and Zorro the Gay Blade was included in those. My friends never looked at me the same after that.
I remember thinking it was funny, but I honestly, other than that very brief description I gave about a minute ago, couldn't tell you any of the details of the movie.
It's a great movie. It's weird. It's kind of random, which is how I like things. Do we have comments?
We do. So Dan Johnson says, I never even heard of this movie.
Well, Dan, you're lucky I let you date my sister. Mark Matthews says, this sword to fight injustice, and this hat which needs reblocking.
I don't know the context, but, that sounds funny. Cachadora said, the papos.
These are pretty much all just lines from the movie. Marta Barbachano, that's my mother, says, the ships in the fields, the bababas. And Josh says, WTF.
Yeah, and he says, I must have missed something.
Did he miss that we had a podcast?
No, I just don't think he ever saw the movie or heard of it. And then Anji Banji 4 says, the little Vavavas with a sheep emoji.
It's the bababas.
Yeah.
The ships in the field.
I don't know what that means.
This movie has a lot of really great one-liners, and unless you have the context, you're not going to know what hell's going on.
So I know George Hamilton is the star of the movie, who's famous for being really tan and handsome.
Really tan? More like painted.
Right. He was also in the, not Dracula Dead and Loving It, but the other Dracula spoof, like Once Bitten or Love at First Bite. Is this from the same company that did that?
I have no idea.
Oh.
It's kind of in the same vein of humor. Kind of like The Naked Gun, that type of humor.
Right.
And not necessarily slapstick, but I think the dialogue is very similar to those.
Right. Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember it being very tongue-in-cheek and just kind of absurd. But yeah, I don't really know. I'm ready to watch it.
Should we do a summary? I just kind of feel like reading a summary from IMDb. This is an anonymous contribution. It says, in 1840s Mexico, wealthy landowner Don Diego Vega learns of his late father's secret as Zorro, the masked folk hero, and Vega adopts his new persona. But when Vega is incapacitated by an injury, he asks Ramon, his very gay long-lost twin brother, now calling himself Bunny, to replace him as the caped hero, who makes some drastic changes to his Zorro persona.
Huh. So it's his brother. I said it was his cousin.
It's his womb mate. That's definitely a line I remember.
That's funny.
Womb mate.
Womb mate.
Yeah, I think that's actually where that came from.
Where what came from?
Womb mate.
I've never heard of
You've
womb mate
never
before.
heard of womb mate.
No, I've never heard of
You must not know very many twins.
No, I don't.
I know many twins.
I don't really know very many twins. Let's go watch this movie.
I'm a twin magnet. Yeah, let's go.
He's sexy, zany, sensational.
You recognize that famous sign, huh?
Oh, yes, senor. It is a number 2.
No, it's the sign of
Zorro. Oh, Zorro!
That is a little more like it.
20th Century Fox and Melvin Simon Productions present George Hamilton. And George Hamilton as
Zorro!
Swing with Zorro. Ball with Zorro. And catch a few Z's with Zorro.
You're the bravest man I ever met.
I'm very impressed with myself, too.
About Zorro, the gay blade.
We are back from watching Zorro, the Gay Blade. Are you a changed man?
I very, very, very much enjoyed this film. I was kind of worried going into it that it was just going to be very slapsticky Naked Gun, which I like the Naked Gun movies. I like the really slapsticky movies, but they're kind of hard to cover on the podcast because it's so much jokes and lines that you kind of have to watch.
There are a lot of bits compressed into a script.
Exactly, so it's really hard to
with
cover
a vague
those.
outline.
Exactly, and I think this wasn't quite in that vein. There was enough of a plot that it was a standalone thing, and there was just a lot of dumb jokes in it, like throwaway lines, but they all fit within the scenes. It's not like random things popping up and...
Well, because the way it was structured, it really was an homage to the Zorro films and to a lot of films, like early Hollywood films, like the big original blockbusters, the first big budget movies. Really?
So yeah, so at the beginning of the movie, it actually opens up with footage from another Zorro movie, and it kind of sets it up like a serious movie initially, and it was like, Zorro, you know, he was a folk hero, and he, you know, robbed from the rich and gave to the poor, and he was everybody loved him, and he'll be a legend forever in the hearts of the people, in the hearts of the landowners. He was a real pain in the ass. But they actually showed footage from an old Zorro movie.
How did they get away with that?
The same studio as Fox did it, so they probably had the rights to it. And then apparently, yeah, it's a direct sequel to like the Mark of Zorro or something like that. There's so many Zorro movies, but it was specifically that it used footage from a specific film, and it's kind of a spiritual sequel is what they said it was.
Spiritual sequel.
Right.
All right. But that's special.
I right off the bat, once I heard to the landowners, he was a real pain in the ass. I was like, I like this already.
I'm all in.
And it was really funny. I thought there was a lot of very well crafted jokes, and I didn't feel like it was too slapsticky. Like, it wasn't like Scary Movie or Austin Powers. It had a pretty good plot. It was only 93 minutes long, so it went pretty quick. I enjoyed my entire time watching this film. I
love George Hamilton, and I especially love watching him being okay with making fun of himself.
Right. I only know him from this movie now and Love at First Bite, and then he was in a ton of commercials in the 90s and stuff like that.
He's still working a lot. He has 122 credits on IMDb, and he's working in stuff this year. Like, that is badass.
He just did a Colonel Sanders commercial because KFC has this little thing where every 2 months they replace the actor who plays Colonel Sanders in their commercials, and he did the tanned, crispy Colonel Sanders.
Oh, man. Like, how long do you think it's going to be before we retire Colonel Sanders?
Never.
Yeah, he's a little problematic.
Nope.
He was kind of a crazy dude.
Yep. I don't think he was a real person.
No, he was. Colonel Sanders was a real person.
Oh.
He had his secret recipe and his, secret pressure cookers, and he kept them all in a giant barn. He was a wackadoodle.
Uh-huh. Coca-Cola, there's only 2 people who know the actual recipe, and they're not allowed to be in the same room or something like that.
Well, no one cares because it doesn't have cocaine anymore, so whatever, you're not that special.
Cocaine.
Cocaina.
Yeah, let's get back to the movie.
Do you want to do a little summary in your own words?
Yeah, basically in a nutshell, the movie starts off with Don Diego Vega. He is in bed with a very beautiful woman, and this guy...
She?
I mean, she's supposed to be very beautiful. This man comes to the window and is like, that's my wife. And he's kind of like, how dare you enter my house without my permission? And then the guy's like,
I'm astonished you would enter my house.
Yeah. It's a little... Is George Hamilton's white, right? Like, he's Caucasian, right?
He is. Okay, so
are you as
setup,
a Latina?
No, hang on.
No, I just got a question.
You just threw away the whole setup, which was the comedy of the situation. You're supposed to think that he is, in this rich woman's house.
Right.
But then the husband arrives home and he's like, he's not away like you thought he was, because they were just talking about him. But then he turns the situation around and is like, I'm astonished you would enter my house.
Right. Yeah, so then the guy's like, I could say the same thing about you entering my wife or something along those lines, right?
I brought my 5 brothers.
Right. So then he like goes to fight him, and exactly that. He goes, you're too old. I could fight you plus 4 others. He goes, well, it's a good thing I brought 5 of my brothers, kind of thing. And they're fighting, and it's, you know, they're making a bunch of jokes while they're fighting. But then after that fight ends and he kind of runs away, he gets a letter from his father saying, come home. Mm-hmm. So he goes home, and he finds out that his dad actually died because he fell off his horse when a turtle scared the horse. And then so he finds out that his father was actually Zorro. He decides initially to wear the Zorro costume to a ball, but on his way to the ball, he sees an injustice and decides to become Zorro for real. And he gets hurt his very first night as Zorro, and then it turns out that his brother, who is flamboyantly gay, who used to be Ramon but now identifies as Bunny Wigglesworth after being sent to the Navy, he convinces his brother to take up the mantle as Zorro while he is recovering, and they just fight injustice along the way, and it's very comical.
It is indeed comedic. One of the lines that stands out to me that I have heard my entire life is actually pretty early in the film, because my mother says it. Pretty much anytime anyone mentions Los Angeles, she will say, Los Angeles, the birthplace of me.
She does say that a lot, and I had no idea what it was from, and now it makes a lot more sense.
You just thought my mother was forgetting that she was born in New York.
Well, no, I figured it was a bit from something, but I didn't want to be like, hey, Mom, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. It's pretty good. You know, honestly, even though we just watched it, I don't think I would be able to give you a summary, like a clear-cut summary of the plot of this film.
Well, I already gave it, so we're good.
Yeah, but it's really just the bits that stand out to me.
Right.
There are a lot of really great one-liners, and it's interesting that it takes the slapstick dialogue, but doesn't include a lot of the physical humor. It includes more of like the random absurdity humor, like wide shots that are just really silly. Like his, what's the name of his?
Paco.
Is it Paco?
It's Paco.
Paco? You
Paco.
sure?
It's Paco.
The wide shot of Paco wearing the bear costume while riding the horse.
Well, and they speed up that footage just a little bit.
And they do. And what's really funny about this film is it's not a cheap film. Like, it has George Hamilton, it has Lauren Hutton, bless her gap-toothed smile. And for some reason, there are these random shots that are the shittiest, bumpiest, blurriest shots. And you wonder how the hell they made it into the final cut. But then, like, it had to be on purpose because it's just so bad and so absurd. There's no way that they didn't do that intentionally.
But then they also have very good production values on, like, the choreography and the fight scenes. Like, they look like the Zorro fight scenes.
They're really good fight scenes.
Like, they're nothing like crazy by today's standards, but they look like the Zorro fight scenes from the old movies.
Well, and then they put so much work into the cinematography and other scenes, like for instance, when the alcalde decides to throw a party for his wife's necklace, just to show off her new necklace, a piece of jewelry. There's this follow shot that is absolutely masterfully done.
No, that was a beautiful shot.
And it's choreographed impeccably. And Zorro gets this chance to throw this cape off dramatically, and it lands on someone behind him, and it's just beautiful.
No, it was really interesting.
You would think it was in some kind of epic film that is marked in history, like Academy Award nominee, and yet it's in this really bizarre random film.
It was nominated for Golden Globe. George Hamilton was actually specifically nominated for Best Actor in Comedy or Musical.
That's great.
Now, and honestly, I mean, he realistically is credited as 2 characters, Bunny and Don Diego.
Yeah.
But I mean, realistically, he played like 4 or 5 roles.
He
Because
did.
he played Don Diego, he played Zorro, he played Bunny, and obviously that version of Zorro, the gay Zorro, and then he also played Margarita Wigglesworth. If you look at the
I mean, nah, that was just supposed to be the cousin playing Margarita.
Well, I mean, it's brother playing the cousin Margaret.
Oh, yeah,
but in
brother.
reality, it's technically another alter ego, and he plays another character. And it's not a small portion of the movie. That's a good 15, 20-minute segment of the movie.
Yeah, but I mean, does Sherlock Holmes get credited as a second person when he dresses up as a woman? No.
No, but I mean, that's like a bit for a minute. Like, this is a pretty substantial part of the role in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, one could argue.
Could they?
One could argue.
I mean, they could argue, but they'd be wrong.
Somebody on IMDb in the trivia made that argument.
Someone on IMDb doesn't know what they're talking about.
Fine. One of the scenes that I really liked was towards the beginning. And once again, he's going to a costume party for the general captain. What's the actual word? That his title? Alcalde. He is going, and his, like you mentioned earlier, his right hand man Paco is dressed as a bear, but it really looks like a fluffy dog. And he comes like, "What are you?"
Hideous dog.
He goes, "What are you, a hideous dog?" And he like, Paco's a mute, and so he pantomimes being a bear, and he goes, "You're a bear? Not with those ears. I might give you pig, but that's as far as I'll go." And it's like, what? And then so they go on their way to the ball, and he sees a tax collector like robbing an old man. So he decides, you know what, I'm gonna step up and I'm gonna be Zorro. And so he gets the guy, he fights him, and he 2 times in a row he gets mistaken. So he like carves the Z into a tree, and the guy's like, "Does that strike fear in your heart?" And he goes, "No, I don't know what that is." And he goes, "You don't know the legend of Zorro?" He goes, "No, but I'm new to the region. It's very nice, though." And so then he gets the money and he brings it back to the old man. And he does the same thing. He goes, "Are you from the area?" And he goes, "Yes, I've lived here my entire life." And he goes, "And you keep up with current events and past events, right?" "Oh, absolutely." He goes, "Okay." And then he carves the Z again. He goes, "You recognize that symbol?" And he goes, "Yes, that's the number 2. And he's like, "No, it's a Z for Zorro." "If you say so." That's how my granddaughter writes her 2s. And I just thought that was stupid, but I thought it was really funny how he's very self-conscious and he's not sure of himself. But I honestly thought this movie was the existing Zorro gets hurt and then has a family member fill in. I didn't realize going into the movie that he was Zorro for a day before getting hurt.
Yeah. It's moments like that really stand out to you and that are memorable because they're bits that you can understand as a kid. Right. And they're still funny when you revisit it as an adult, which I really appreciated. I was a little worried that revisiting it, I'd be like, "Oh, okay, this is actually just dumb."
One joke that I want to go over, and I think this is really only works for people from California, but there's a point where they need to elect the new leader, and so all the Dons get to show up and have their vote and everything. So it's a group of men, like older men, show up, and he goes, "I'm Don Diego from San Fernando. I'm Don Francisco from San Jose. I'm Don Fernando from San Diego. I'm Don Jose from San Bernardino. I'm Don Luis Obispo from Bakersfield."
Bakersfield. My great-grandfather was a Don.
Oh, yeah?
Don Ruben Barbachano.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a little shifty.
God, there's so many. This one's hard because you don't want to just read all the one-liners in it because hopefully after listening to this podcast, some people who maybe haven't seen this movie will go see it.
If they can.
If they can
find it.
Okay, so it was hard to find. It's not available streaming anywhere. Now, this is what's weird.
You can go to the library and get a copy.
You can get
really
absolutely
easily.
You can do that. Now, if you want to watch it online, what's weird is normally when you can find an entire movie on YouTube, that normally means it's a bad movie or that the studio doesn't care about it.
Right.
This movie is on YouTube multiple places. There are no shortage of streams that you can find this movie on YouTube, which is how we ultimately watched it. Because we couldn't even pay to rent it anywhere. So, it's on YouTube. Go check it out. It's definitely worth the 90 minutes or so that it's on. So it's really hard not to just say all my favorite jokes from this movie, because that's most of what my notes are. Just really funny lines. I do like, kind of on the flip side with Zorro the Gay Blade, his first outing, he goes and does the Z thing, and he uses a whip instead of a sword. Instead of just doing a Z, he writes out Zorro on a wall and just whips. It's like a good minute of him just whoosh.
Well, like, and how did he get so good with that whip? Like, is he just a little freaky?
Well,
what's going on there?
He mentions that he picked it up in the Navy.
Oh, God. The Navy.
The Royal Navy. He went to the British Navy, which is weird because his family's from Spain.
Well, I mean, really, it's the United States Navy that gets the reputation for having all the gays.
No, the British Navy people kind of make those jokes too.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
the
man.
Navy in general, just people were like, "Oh, the Navy." My grandfather was in the Navy. How dare you disparage the Navy?
My dad was in the Navy.
That's true.
I mean, like, pretty much any place that would give you the opportunity to go into port in San Francisco was what you would go into if you were a young gay man back in the day.
Right. But I mean, but then also, I mean, that's just where if you, during World War II, if you were on the Eastern Front and they found out you were gay, that's where you got sent back.
So as far as, like, the gay jokes, you know what's interesting is this
didn't
film...
think it was that bad.
Right, yeah, considering it's Zorro the Gay Blade, it actually holds up a lot better than most films that have gay jokes.
Like from like the 90s and 2000s.
Right, there's nothing disparaging.
There's nothing problematic, really, honestly.
I mean, it's a little problematic as a whole for society to paint all gay men as being fashion forward and tasteful. When
But
that's
honestly,
not reality.
back
Back
then,
then,
a rich Spanish-born man probably would be that way.
I'm surprised and, well, pleasantly surprised that there was nothing distasteful or overtly homophobic about this.
No, not at all. Like, honestly, there's like a positive... There's a point where Zorro the Gay Blade goes out and he goes, "You don't have to feel bad about being poor. Just don't be poorly dressed," or something like that.
Well, the only condition that he puts forth when he agrees to take on the role of Zorro is that he has to be allowed to put his own spin on it.
Right.
Which means he just wants different outfits.
Every time he shows up.
Right. Every time he does anything, he has a new outfit. So the very next day, people are reporting to the authorities that this man showed up, and they're always giving specific fruit examples of what he was wearing.
Well, that's because
he was dressed entirely in plum. Everything matched.
Right. Well, that's because for whatever reason, the Alcalde thinks that there's a hidden message in it, and he's like,
"Didn't you study California history? You built a mission.
Everybody in 4th grade built a mission.
It's California, though.
Let's be real.
Not everyone.
Everybody's parents built a mission.
Every poor 4th grader's parents had to build a damn mission.
I was lucky that I was able to get San Juan Bautista, which is only 15 minutes away from where we grew up.
San Juan Bautista. That one has actually been the only continuously functioning parish out of all of the missions in California. Did you know that?
I did know that. You know what I made the roof out of?
What?
Macaroni. Or some other pasta. I don't remember.
Your
sort of
mom
pasta.
made the roof.
No, my dad was the one who helped with all those projects. Now, he was good in that he wouldn't just straight do it for us. He would do like a portion and have us help and make us do it. So he was one of the better parents about not necessarily just flat out doing it for us.
Do kids in other parts of the country have to do a mission?
I think I don't know if it's a mission. They might have to do something else, but there's always some sort of project. There's always I know in California, 4th grade it's California history and you do a mission, and then 6th grade it's like world history and you have to do a country. 5th grade is a state report. So in 5th grade I did North Carolina, and then in 6th grade, well, it's because I had family there and I didn't know them very well and I kind of had a tie, and that's why I picked it. And then 6th grade is a country and I did Egypt.
Very exciting.
Yep. I made a pyramid.
I was homeschooled, so we just went to all of the missions.
You went to all 26?
Not all 20s. I mean, I'm sure at some point we have seen almost all of them. There are some small ones that are pretty much in ruins that no one really goes to. But yeah, that's part of California. Fun fact, I am descended from one of the original rancheros who built the oldest house in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
Avila Adobe.
Birthplace of me.
Built by Francisco Avila.
We've been there.
We have.
It was pretty cool.
It's a museum in, I guess, downtown.
It's like
Los
right
Angeles.
in the middle of downtown.
Yeah, it's right by it's not a train depot. It's a train station.
Right. It's in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. I mean, that is one fun thing that I get to do when even if they're gross fictionalizations of actual history, but one of the things I've always really enjoyed is that when I do watch things that are about old California, I have a family tie to it.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, because I'm part Mexican and, this used to be Mexico.
Used to be.
But we still have rednecks complaining about pressing 1 for English.
Right. So one of the other weird kind of plot points throughout this entire movie is at the very beginning when he comes back to California, he runs into the guy.
Alcalde.
I'm just going to call him Esteban.
Esteban.
And you find out that they were childhood friends and rivals, and they fought over...
the hand of a woman.
Who... When he says Esteban, he goes, it's actually El Capitan. And he goes, oh, I must congratulate you. And then he finds out that Esteban married the girl that they fought over. And he goes, oh, I must also congratulate you again. And he's like, no, I'm going to congratulate you on that one. And the guy's like a dick to his wife, like the whole movie.
He really
so,
is.
Like when they find out, when he mentions that that his right-hand man Paco is a mute, he was like, oh, I wish my wife would learn something from that.
Aww.
And then you have this...
But they've got that power couple dynamic, where
right?
it's like they hate each other, but you know they're
it's
respected.
a social status kind of thing. But then there's a point where the woman shows up and tries to bang Don Diego, and she's like, "Why didn't we get married?" And he goes, "Because I didn't ask you to."
Aww.
And then there's another. We find out that they only have sex 12 times a year, but it's all in one night. And there's a point where the guy even teases her, like, you know that thing we do one night a year? And she's like, yeah. And he's like,
2 more months.
Kisses her 3 more months, and then leaves her on the ground, like throws her on the ground and walks away. And then he uses her necklace. You mentioned that they throw a second ball, as to celebrate her necklace. But he does it as a trap because he thinks that Zorro will fall for it. Zorro does fall for it, but he tricks them by sending out fake invitations that makes everybody dress as Zorro so he can just go and steal it. That was pretty cool. Very crafty.
That was pretty cool.
Smart ass Zorro.
One interesting thing about this film is most of the leading ladies have really annoying voices.
Yeah.
Like raspy, grating, annoying voices.
But a lot of the leading women in the 70s that were in these kind of like action movies or hero movies,
they were
Romancing the
character-y.
Stone, this, Indiana Jones, they were all kind of, even the Superman movie, Margaret Kidder in Superman, they all kind of had that same kind of loud, over the top, kind of grating thing. I don't know how to describe it other than that.
It was before character-y looking women could be in film, so I think they just chose attractive women with annoying voices.
Right.
Like,
That's exactly what it is.
She can be funny. She's annoying.
Right. It really was that. And what's weird is by the end of this movie, they're going to leave and go move to Boston.
Boston.
Yeah. So I thought that, like, you think the movie's going to end at the ball at the ball, Bunny dresses up as Margarita Wigglesworth. Mm-hmm. And basically is just acting as his true bunny self, but dressed as a woman, and spills wine on the wife to get her to go to the bathroom so they can steal the necklace. And then during this, at the ball, Bunny tells Don Diego that Charlotte, who's the love interest in the movie, loves Zorro and he should make a move. And, you think that that's going to happen. They fall in love, and it kind of ends. And you think that's the end of the movie. Like, you could end the movie feasibly right there. Mm-hmm. And then it cuts to the next day. Esteban kidnaps the woman. So he goes to rescue her, and he gives himself up to save her life. And he's about to be unmasked, and he kind of pleads, don't unmask me for the safety of my family and the people that I love. And he tries to get the people to support him. And right as they're going to shoot him and unmask him, the bunny shows back up, and he's wearing this bright, flamboyant gold costume. And he goes, and he said, because he was supposed to go back to the Navy, and he goes, I couldn't not show up with this one last outfit. I had one more outfit. I had to show it off. So he ends up saving his brother, and then there's this huge brawl with the entire city fighting everybody. And then, like, they just all end up turning on Esteban. Like, there's no real reason for that to happen, but they, even his guards end up just turning on him for some reason. Did you catch why they did that?
Not really.
It just kind of seemed like, we don't want to fight anymore. We'll just turn on the guy.
They're pretty much over it. There is one glaring plot hole in this film.
Oh, is there?
There is.
Enlighten me, please.
So he decided that he was going to take over this role of Zorro for his twin.
Right.
And seemingly overnight, he is able to come in and save the day in all these different small instances because
Right.
immediately the alcalde is getting all these reports
Right.
of him showing up in his different costumes. This happened very quickly.
Right.
So not only was there someone to make these costumes for him, but seemingly there must have been more than one person, one skilled
Well, this was actually took
seamstress.
place over a month.
Okay, but still, who's making these costumes and
Maybe
why
he
aren't
had
they
'em.
talking?
Maybe he had all this
Why?
stuff.
Okay, so I could buy him maybe having the costumes, but he seems too discerning to not find a perfect fabric match for all of the masks that coordinate.
Right. I mean, that's the same thing you can say about any superhero
Was
movie.
he doing it
short
himself?
Short of the MCU, because we know Tony Stark makes all those costumes in the MCU. But prior to the Marvel MCU movies, where the hell did the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man get
Okay,
his costume?
no, Tony Stark does not make all the costumes.
Yeah, I mean, he pays for them all.
Jarvis makes all the costumes, I would assume.
I mean, like a 3D printer makes them.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, he's got some sewing machines built in there.
Right, I'm sure.
He's programming Jarvis. Jarvis is doing the heavy lifting.
But
Jarvis,
he designs them.
Jarvis is an amazing seamstress. Jarvis can sew stretch jersey like it's nobody's business,
Right.
and that's no small feat.
Well, but Tony Stark does
And
design
Kevlar.
them.
And Kevlar.
I don't know if there actually is Kevlar, because Captain America gets shot a bunch.
Have you
in
ever
Winter
sewn with
Soldier.
Kevlar?
Yes.
It's very frustrating.
No, I've never sewn with Kevlar.
It's very frustrating.
Anywho, that's the thing you can say about any superhero movie.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Is Zorro really a superhero?
I mean,
though?
he's kind of like one of the archetypes that kind of led into super, because things like Zorro and the Phantom and the Shadow, like kind of the pulp noir stuff, is what like even Marvel and DC kind of started with, and then they moved into superheroes.
How old is Zorro?
I mean, he's dead if he was a real person. I don't know. Let's find out.
Let's find out so we have some more to edit into this. Fictional character. Created in 1919 by American pulp writer Johnston McCulley
That sounds like a Whitey.
and appearing in works set in the Pueblo, Los Angeles during the era of Spanish California. So during the era that my ancestors kind of ran the show here, there were not that many landowners in Los Angeles. So one could say Zorro was rubbing elbows with my 8th great-grandfather.
He was probably fighting against your
He was
grandfather.
probably stealing shit from my 8th great-grandfather. Zorro is not a friend of the family. And by extension, neither is Antonio Banderas.
What's the popcorn guy again? Orville
He never even worked on his accent.
or
Orville Redenbacher?
yeah, the guy who created Zorro looks exactly like him.
I guess he kind of does. Doesn't Orville Redenbacher have suspenders and a vacuum?
I'm just saying his face. No, he doesn't have a vacuum. That's the Hoover guy.
Auric. My 8-pound Auric XL.
Oric, that's right. You're stupid.
You're stupid.
Stupid. That's good. That was good. That's good banter. Oh, you know what? Another scene that I really liked. It's just this is probably the most slapsticky, naked gun, scary movie type of joke in the whole thing.
It kind of makes me nervous when you say slap and naked in the same sentence.
Slapsticky, naked gun series. So there's a point where they're talking about how overtaxed the people are, and then as they're going to go vote for the new leader, you see this man on a wheel, and they're like, he was short 3 pesos in his taxes. He'll never be short again. Because they stretched him out. Like, that's probably the most
dark.
It's probably the most in line with like those really dumb movies. But I thought it was good.
Yeah. I do find it ironic that a Mexican vigilante would defend the commoners and the indigenous people of California when, I mean, like, really any Spaniard is gonna be kinda leaning towards colonialism a little bit there.
Yeah, but he loved the people.
The pipples.
The peoples.
The pipples.
Oh, that was the other thing that was funny, and it was a thread throughout the whole movie. So when we first meet the love interest, Charlotte, they're kind of having a back and forth kind of thing. They're flirting a little bit, and she's like, oh, you know, the rich people are the worst. And he kind of calls her out. He goes, you have 3 names. You're able to travel by yourself. Clearly you have money too, so like don't act all high and mighty. And then he says something, and she's like, "What did you say?" And he says it again, and she's like, "You have a very thick accent." And then they kind of like bicker a little bit, and she leaves, and he goes, "It's not very helpful to tell people they have an accent when they don't." And then when his brother shows up, because he spent the last 20 years with the British Royal Navy, and he's very like, very like dandy. He says something
because they made him into a man.
They made him into a man. And he's like, I don't remember exactly what he says, but he says something completely fine, but he doesn't say it with the ridiculous accent that Don Diego has, and he goes, "You have a real bad accent. There's something wrong with your bowels."
The vowels. A-E-I-O-U.
A-E-I-O-U.
Vaguely. You know what's interesting? I remember being very young and someone asked me what the vowels were, and I said A-E-I-O-U.
And sometimes why?
It's just funny that Spanish was never my first language. Spanish was my sister's, both of their first languages, but it was never mine, and yet somehow I ended up with that. Feeling like a jerk.
One last scene that I do want to bring up that I thought was funny. It was when they're trying to convince Bunny to become Zorro. You see him like a profile, and he looks tanned because they're like, "You'll never pass as Zorro. Nobody will buy it. Like we need to do some makeup. We need to teach you how to act like Zorro." And so you see him, he's tan, his hair's dark, he's got a little mustache, and then he says a line like Zorro a little bit. All he does is talk slower, so he sounds more like the indigenous people. And then the camera moves to the other side, and he still has his normal blonde and white makeup stuff. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm the man, I'm the people," kind of thing. It's such a stupid scene, but I loved it. I thought it was hilarious.
He was doing his one-man show for the sake of his twin.
Right.
Upon later visitation, did this ruin your original ideas about this film?
No, I actually really enjoyed it. I really thought this movie was going to be maybe really bad and stupid, but I actually thought it was kind of genius in its comedy.
I feel validated. Did not ruin my childhood at all. I think every time I watch this film, I love it more because there's this inherent mistrust we have in the films that our parents made us watch because they love them, where we're a little bit concerned that when we watch them again, it's just going to ruin it. And this did not ruin this for me.
I liked it a lot. I thought it was well paced. I thought the jokes were well crafted. I really enjoyed it.
It has a lot to offer.
Really say. Yeah.
Yep.
And worst case scenario, you watch it and you don't like it, it's only 93 minutes.
Well, and I think one of the things I love about this is that it has something to offer everyone. It is still a family movie, but there are adult-themed jokes that only the adults will get.
Right. Absolutely.
Which is always good.
Right.
So, what are we covering next time?
So, we've noticed we're not big sports people.
Not at all.
But we grew up in the Bay Area, and the Sharks are doing very well. Okay. And we've been seeing a ton of hockey.
Sharks games are always fun. And hockey is fun when you're there in person because it's violent and scary. Like, there's always slight chance of blood.
Yeah, always a little slight chance. I actually sold a suit to a couple of the Sharks players when I worked at Hugo Boss.
Oh, aren't you fancy? Did they have teeth?
Yeah, they did, actually.
They're probably wearing a flipper.
Maybe. But anyway, because the Sharks are doing so well and hockey season's coming close to an end, we decided we're going to watch a hockey movie, and we're going to cover the first Mighty Ducks movie.
Yep.
We're gonna give Emilio Estevez some royalty money by renting his movie.
Oh, Emilio.
Emilio!
He cannot help who his brother is.
Who's his brother?
Charlie Sheen.
No, I'm just kidding, I know. But yeah, we're gonna watch the Mighty Ducks, and I'm very excited. I wanted to watch the second one, but Katrina said nobody would listen to an episode on the second one. We have to do the first one, and that's fine.
Because I'm not watching two.
The second one's the best one.
I don't like sports movies, but I'm going to take one for the team.
Yeah, you is.
The team being you.
All right. Well, Katrina, where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinosity, but you could follow Katrina Sherwood on Instagram too.
Ooh,
I made
yourself.
that public. I'm not that hard to find. I'm really not that hard to find.
And you can check out her YouTube as well, Katrinosity. Subscribe. Like it, do all that stuff. You can check out our YouTube channel as well. Link in the description bio, whatever. You can check out everything else that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the places. And
go listen to our other podcasts.
Remake Rewind. Katrina's been on there a bunch. It's pretty good. That's mainly my podcast, but Katrina's popped on there a couple times. It's pretty good. It ebbs and flows.
Has his moments.
But yeah, thank you guys for listening.
Bye.
Bye.